It was a Thursday, mid-September, I think. The kind of day where the sun starts going down a little earlier, and the chill in the air reminds you that summer's over, whether you're ready for it or not. I'd left work an hour early. Not for any particular reason, just a slow day, and I figured Sarah would be home around the same time. We'd been missing each other a lot lately, like two people living under the same roof but always moving in opposite directions. I thought maybe we could reconnect a little. Pick up Ty from that place on 6th, maybe eat on the couch like we used to. Nothing fancy, just normal. When I opened the front door, I didn't expect anything to be wrong. I wasn't looking for anything. But sometimes trouble doesn't need an invitation. It just shows up. The first thing I noticed was the jacket. It was hanging off the back of one of the kitchen chairs. A soft pink with a faux fur collar, small in size, definitely not Sarah's. She hates pink. Always has. Said it made her feel like a bottle of rose. I stared at it for a second, confused. I knew all of Sarah's jackets. After 8 years together, you just know. It's not like I kept a mental inventory, but I would have noticed that one. I would have remembered. Then my eyes shifted to the table. 2 wine glasses, both used. One had lipstick on the rim, a pale nude shade that didn't match anything Sarah owned. I'd bought her lipsticks before. I knew her colors. One glass was closer to the seat where that jacket was draped. The other sat near Sarah's usual spot, beside her phone. There was still wine in them. Not much, but enough to say it hadn't been long since they'd been used. A half-empty bottle stood nearby on the counter. Like the end of a conversation someone didn't want to finish. I heard movement in the living room. My heart rate didn't jump. Not yet. I wasn't thinking something's wrong right away. More like, what the hell's going on? Hey! Sarah called out casually, her voice floating from the couch. Didn't expect you home so soon. I walked in and found her curled up on the sofa, blanket over her legs, phone in hand. She looked comfortable, a little too comfortable. Yeah, I said. Meeting got cut short. She glanced back at me, then over my shoulder toward the kitchen. Her eyes lingered for a split second too long. Oh, that. Clara stopped by for a little while. She's going through something with Nate again, and you know how she gets. I nodded slowly. Didn't know she was in town. She flew back Tuesday. Surprise visit. I walked over and sat on the arm of the couch. She leave already? Just a few minutes ago. I looked toward the kitchen again. The jacket was still there. She forgot her coat? Oh yeah, Sarah said, a little too quickly. She left in a rush. I told her I'd drop it off tomorrow. The moment she said it, she turned her gaze back to her phone. Like the conversation was already over. But it wasn't. Not for me. I didn't see her car outside, I added, just to see what she'd say. She Ubered, she replied, cool as ever. Didn't want to drive, we had wine. Right. That explained everything. I smiled and leaned down to kiss her forehead. You good? She nodded. Totally. The moment hung in the air, like we were both pretending to breathe normally, while something darker hovered between us. Invisible but heavy. She went back to scrolling, thumb moving in perfect rhythm. I stood up and walked back into the kitchen. I grabbed both glasses and dumped them in the sink, then rinsed out the bottle and stuck it back in the fridge. A Cabernet. One we both liked, but hadn't opened in months. I wiped down the counter, more out of habit than purpose, but really I was just giving myself something to do. Something that wasn't staring at the jacket or asking the question already forming in the back of my head. I didn't say anything else that night. I didn't press. I didn't accuse. But I didn't forget. That night in bed, she fell asleep almost immediately. She turned away from me, curled up on her side like always. Nothing unusual. Nothing suspicious. But I stared at the ceiling long after her breathing slowed. I couldn't stop thinking about that jacket. I couldn't stop asking myself why Clara would show up unannounced, spend exactly enough time to finish half a bottle of wine, and then leave her coat behind. I couldn't stop wondering if that lipstick on the glass really belonged to a woman, or if it belonged to someone who didn't know I'd be home early. There was no smell of cologne, no shoes out of place, no doors left ajar. But it felt like the aftermath of something. like walking into a room that had just been vacated, the tension still buzzing in the air. Over the next few days, I told myself not to overthink it. I didn't want to be that guy, the one who jumps to conclusions because a wine glass was out of place. I wanted to believe her. God, I really did. But once something like that settles in your gut, it doesn't just go away. It nags at you. It rewrites the past in reverse. You start to think about the little changes, the way she started locking her phone, keeping it face down during dinner. The new perfume she said was from a work gift bag. The sudden uptick in client dinners and emergency late nights. You notice how she's always texting now. How she leaves the room to take calls. How she comes back looking a little flustered, but says it's just stress from the project they're working on. You want to trust. You do. But the math doesn't add up the way it used to. And that unease is a loud silence, the kind you feel in your bones. That night, after she fell asleep, I walked back out to the kitchen. I stood there, staring at the jacket again, still hanging on the chair like a forgotten prop from a play I hadn't been invited to. I picked it up slowly, checked the tag. No name, just a brand I'd never heard of. I held it for a moment, then folded it carefully and placed it on the table. Back in bed, I watched her sleep, peacefully, maybe too peacefully. And that's when it hit me, the first real hit, deep in my chest. Something was wrong. I didn't have proof. I didn't have facts. But I knew. Not because of the wine glasses. Not because of the jacket. Because of the way she looked me in the eye and lied. So easily, so comfortably, like she'd done it before. And I realized I hadn't come home early by chance. Somewhere deep inside, I was already suspicious. I just hadn't admitted it to myself yet. The strange how suspicion works. It doesn't arrive all at once, not like a flood. It seeps in slow, like water under a door. Quiet, steady, almost gentle. Until one day you look around and realize your whole house is sinking. After that evening with the wine glasses and the unfamiliar jacket, things didn't blow up. We didn't fight. We didn't even talk about it again. Sarah thanked me the next day for rinsing the glasses. She texted Clara, supposedly, to let her know she still had the jacket. Everything stayed normal. That was the part that scared me. Because if someone can lie that easily, with a smile, with steady eyes, what else are they capable of? In the days that followed, I started noticing more things. Maybe they'd always been there, and I just hadn't been paying attention. Or maybe she'd just gotten better at hiding. She changed the password on her phone. That was the first thing. Subtle but clear. Before, I could glance at her screen to read a recipe or pull up directions. No big deal. Now, the moment I touched it, it locked me out. When I asked about it, she said something about needing stronger security for work. It's company policy, she said. Everyone on my team had to do it. Sounded plausible. Then she started keeping her phone face down all the time. At dinner, on the nightstand, even while watching TV. If it buzzed, she'd glance at it, swipe quickly, and say, "It's nothing." She never used to do that. We used to sit on the couch and share memes and dumb videos without thinking twice. One night, I caught her smiling at something on her screen. Not a casual smile, a real one. The kind that creeps up before you know it's there. The kind I hadn't seen from her in weeks. I asked what was so funny. She hesitated. "Oh, just a work thing," she said, locking the screen before I could see. "Inside joke with the team." Inside joke. I nodded and didn't ask again. But my stomach dropped. That's when I started rewinding the past few months in my head. Looking for patterns. Looking for signs I might have missed. She'd been working late more often, that much was obvious. Not just a day or two here and there. It was consistent. "The campaign is in crunch mode," she kept saying. "This is how it goes before a product launch." I believed her at first. Of course I did. I wanted to, but the hours didn't make sense. Sometimes she wouldn't get home until after 10 p.m. And even then, her stories never quite lined up. One night it was client drinks. The next it was stuck finalizing mock-ups. Another time she came home flustered, hair messy, smelling faintly like someone else's cologne. I remember asking, gently, "You okay?" She looked surprised by the question. like it hadn't occurred to her that I was still paying attention. "Yeah," she said, brushing her hair back. "Just tired." It was chaos at the office. She smiled, kissed me on the cheek, and went straight to the shower. I sat in the kitchen that night, staring at the door she closed behind her. Something about it felt rehearsed, the way she walked in, answered, smiled. Like muscle memory, like she'd done it before. Then came the change in her wardrobe. First, I thought I was being petty, but it was hard not to notice. She started wearing dresses again. Not the comfortable kind, the sharp, striking kind. Form-fitting, backless, new. Her heels were higher, her makeup bolder, and her perfume stronger. When I asked, she said she was trying to look more client-facing at work. "I've got to dress the part," she told me. "They've been bringing in photographers and investors. First impressions matter." Reasonable, sure, but she never dressed like that for me. Not in months. Even our weekends changed. She used to wake up slowly with me, hair a mess, wearing my old college hoodie. We'd eat breakfast in pajamas, go to the farmer's market, argue over what to plant in the garden. Now she was always in a rush, either sleeping late or already gone by the time I woke up. When I asked where she was headed, she'd rattle off names I didn't know. "Oh, just grabbing brunch with Elena. We're trying that new cafe downtown." Or, "Laura wants help picking out stuff for her guest room." Always someone, always somewhere, never with me. I tried not to overreact. I didn't want to become a paranoid mess, interrogating her every time she left the house. That's not the kind of man I am. That's not the marriage I wanted. But the doubts kept stacking. Quietly, relentlessly. One night I decided to make dinner for us. It wasn't a special occasion. I just missed her. I made her favorite grilled salmon with garlic green beans and lemon risotto. I even pulled out the good plates. She didn't show up, didn't call, didn't answer my texts. She walked in at 9:45, laughing at something on her phone. When she saw the table, her face fell, but only for a second. "Oh," she said, setting her bag down. "You made dinner? I thought we could eat together." Her eyes flicked to the food, now cold and congealed. "I told you I had a meeting tonight." "No, you didn't." "I swear I did. I sent you a text." I checked my phone. Nothing. She pulled hers out, stared at the screen for a few seconds too long, then said, "Weird. Must not have gone through." I nodded slowly. She didn't apologize. She didn't sit down. Instead, she disappeared into the bedroom to change, then reemerged in leggings and a hoodie, said she wasn't hungry, and started watching Netflix on her laptop with her AirPods in. I cleaned up alone. I washed the dishes. I poured the wine down the drain. And for the first time in our marriage, I felt like I wasn't living with a partner. I was living with a stranger who borrowed my bathroom and used my Wi-Fi. That night, I lay awake again, staring at the ceiling. I felt stupid. Not just hurt, stupid. Because I'd ignored it. I'd let it go. I wanted so badly to believe that everything was okay. I blinded myself to what was right in front of me. That's the thing about people who lie to you. They don't just steal your trust. They steal your instincts. They make you second-guess what you feel in your gut. But not anymore. I started paying closer attention. I memorized her stories. I made mental notes, names, times, places. I noticed when she said she'd be home by 8 and walked in at 9:30. I noticed when she changed her passcode again and started taking phone calls in the garage for better signal. I noticed everything. And the more I noticed, the clearer it became. She wasn't slipping away. She was already gone. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I didn't want to give her the upper hand. Didn't want her to turn it into a fight about insecurity or trust issues. I knew how that game worked. I've seen it play out with friends. The moment you ask, they spin it back on you. Gaslight you. Make you feel crazy for asking the question you already know the answer to. So I waited, watched, documented. It's not paranoia if you're right. And by then, I was nearly certain. Someone else was in the picture. I didn't have a name yet. I didn't have a face. But I had the pattern. And every night, I lay awake watching it form. Like watching puzzle pieces lock into place. one by one, until the image becomes clear. All I needed now was confirmation. There's a moment, a very specific kind of moment, when suspicion turns into certainty. And once it does, there's no going back. You can't unknow the truth. You can't unsee what you've seen. That moment came for me on a rainy Tuesday. I remember the sky was this low, bruised gray, and traffic was crawling. I was supposed to stay late for a team strategy meeting, but it got canceled last minute. For once, the universe threw me a bone. I texted Sarah. Still at work. A minute passed. Then 2. Then the reply, yup. Long night. Probably here till 10. Love you. I stared at those words, love you, and wondered who else she was saying them to, or if she even meant them anymore. Instead of going home, I drove toward the restaurant she had mentioned earlier in the week. Some new tapas place downtown, supposedly the spot for their creative team dinner. She'd mentioned it casually, almost offhand, while rushing out the door that morning. I'll be at Nola's tonight. Team dinner. Don't wait up. It wasn't even a lie. That's what got me, the precision. The way she folded the truth into her story so neatly that I almost didn't question it. I parked across the street, angled behind a delivery van. From where I sat, I had a perfect line of sight through the large front window of the restaurant. The rain made everything a little distorted, like I was watching through glass that hadn't quite decided whether to be clear or honest. The restaurant was busy but not packed. Candles on tables, dim lighting, the faint hum of people pretending to enjoy life. I scanned the room, and then I saw her, Sarah, sitting at a small corner table near the window. Not with her team, not in a group, with one man, just him, and her. They weren't eating yet. 2 wine glasses sat in front of them, not props this time, not leftovers. Fresh, half full. A bottle nestled in a metal cooler beside them, catching the light like it was proud of itself. She was smiling. Not the polite smile she gave me these days, the one she wore like a mask. This was a real one, the kind that reached her eyes. He leaned forward and said something, and she laughed. Threw her head back a little, touched her hair. A move I knew, a move I'd seen before but not for me. Then he reached across the table and took her hand. She didn't pull away. Her thumb brushed his knuckles. My breath hitched like I'd been punched right under the ribs. I don't remember grabbing my phone. I just knew I had it in my hand, thumb hovering over the camera. I wanted to take a photo, something I could shove in her face later. Something undeniable. But I didn't. I didn't need to. The image burned itself into my brain. He leaned closer. She leaned into him. Their heads nearly touched. She reached up and rested her hand on his shoulder, the way she used to do with me when we were walking through a crowd. Casual in asterisk mate, automatic. And that's when I knew. All the excuses, all the changes, all the distance. It wasn't work. It wasn't stress. It wasn't in my head. It was him. It had always been him. I sat there for another 15 minutes, frozen in my seat, watching their dinner unfold like I was some ghost trapped outside a life I used to live. They never kissed, but they didn't have to. There's a kind of closeness that doesn't need anything physical to scream betrayal. It was in their body language, in the way they moved around each other like they already belonged. Like this wasn't new. Like they'd done this before many times. Like it was normal. I watched Sarah sip her wine, laugh softly, twirl the stem of her glass between her fingers like she was flirting in slow motion. It was almost cinematic, romantic. If I hadn't been sitting in my car, heart pounding, throat tight, I might have thought they looked beautiful together. I don't know how long I stayed there. Maybe an hour, maybe less. Time kind of folded in on itself. But I didn't go inside. I didn't slam the door open. Didn't confront. Didn't shout. Didn't cause a scene. It would have felt good, maybe, for a second. But Sarah was a storyteller. She could spin anything. If I gave her drama, she'd find a way to make herself the victim. She'd cry, apologize, say it wasn't what it looked like. But I knew what I saw, and no amount of words could make me unsee it. So I drove away, hands white-knuckled on the steering wheel, mind reeling. I didn't even go home. I just drove around the city like a ghost, passing bars, gas stations, neighborhoods we used to laugh in. It all felt like it belonged to someone else. It hit me somewhere on I-83, just outside the city limits. The strange calm. It wasn't rage. Not anymore. It was clarity. Sharp, cold, quiet. Like realizing the car you're in is already totaled and you've just been sitting in the wreckage, refusing to get out. That night, I slept in the guest room. Sarah got home after midnight. She tiptoed in, thinking I was asleep. I could hear the zipper on her boots, the sound of her jewelry hitting the ceramic tray on her nightstand, the whisper of her brushing her teeth. She didn't come check on me, didn't notice the distance. Or maybe she did and didn't care. The next morning, I made coffee like always. She came into the kitchen, hair still damp, yawning like she was exhausted. "Morning," she said, pecking my cheek. I nodded, sipping my coffee. "Late night," she shrugged. "Yeah, we didn't finish until after 10. Traffic was awful." I nodded again. Nothing in my face betrayed me. "Client dinner?" I asked, watching her carefully. She froze for half a beat. "MHM. The whole team was there." I stirred my coffee. She didn't look at me, just popped a piece of toast in the toaster like we were living inside a lie we'd both agreed to keep warm. And that's when I knew something else, something deeper. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was the fact that she could look me in the eye, knowing what she'd done, and lie without blinking. That takes a kind of detachment I didn't think she was capable of. Turns out I didn't know her as well as I thought. That night, after she fell asleep, I did something I told myself I wouldn't do. I opened her laptop. It wasn't password protected. Email was still logged in. I didn't have to dig deep. Just a few clicks. Her inbox was tidy, curated. But in her deleted folder, I found traces. Scraps of conversations that hadn't been wiped fast enough. Calendar invites. Dinner reservations. A PDF from 2 weeks ago titled Client Brief, Private. Attached was a copy of a receipt. Nola's. 2 guests. Tuesday night. She didn't even try to cover her tracks. Or maybe she thought I'd never look. I sat in the dark, lit by the glow of her screen, heart hollow, staring at a paper trail of a life I was no longer part of. In that moment, the last bit of hope fell away. This wasn't confusion. This wasn't a mistake. This was a choice. And she'd been making it for a long time. When you finally catch someone in a lie, really catch them, your body doesn't react the way you expect. There's no cinematic explosion, no instant fury or heartbreak. At least not for me. What I felt was silence. A deep, hollow kind of silence. Like the air had been **ked out of the room. Like someone had paused the film, and I was the only one still aware the projector had stopped. The next morning, Sarah kissed me on the forehead like she always did. Her lips were soft, warm, familiar, and completely meaningless. The same lips that told me, "I love you," every day now doubled as tools to cover a lie. I realized then that she wasn't confused, or stuck, or emotionally lost. She was calculated. She'd made her decision a long time ago. She just hadn't told me. But now I knew. And I also knew something else. If I let her explain, she'd find a way to reframe everything. She'd say it wasn't physical. She'd say it happened because I'd been distant, that she'd just needed comfort. Maybe she'd even cry. I could already hear the phrases. "It just happened. I didn't mean to. You have to understand." But understanding was no longer on the table. I didn't want her explanation. I wanted distance. I wanted clarity. So I didn't confront her. I didn't rage or cry or scream. I started planning. That day at work, I didn't answer her texts. Just a short "busy, we'll talk later." I sat at my desk and stared out the window for a long time, watching cars move through the parking lot like pieces on a game board. Everyone below was living out their routines, grabbing lunch, laughing in groups, planning birthdays or worrying about deadlines. Meanwhile, I was watching my entire life come apart like threads pulled from a sweater. But I wasn't falling apart with it. Not this time. I opened a blank document on my laptop and started making a list. Not out of anger, but out of necessity. 1. Change all account passwords. 2. Separate finances, cancel joint cards. 3. Lawyer consultation. 4. Apartment listings. 5. Backup files/photos I care about. 6. Start gathering evidence. 7. Wait. Observe. Say nothing. Every time I thought of a new step, I added it. It wasn't revenge I wanted. It was control. Revenge is emotional. Control is survival. That night, I got home before her. I cooked for myself, nothing fancy, just pasta and vegetables, garlic bread on the side. I put on a jazz playlist I hadn't listened to in years. Miles Davis filled the kitchen like old wallpaper. I even opened a beer and sat at the table. Phone turned off, soaking in the quiet. When Sarah came in around 9:30, she looked surprised to see the lights on. "Hey," she said, dropping her bag. "I thought you had that late call?" "Cancelled," I said. "Figured I'd cook." She hesitated, staring at the counter where the dishes were already cleaned. Her tone softened. "You didn't wait for me?" I shook my head. "Didn't know when you'd be back." She looked like she wanted to say something else, but she didn't, just walked upstairs to change. I knew her pattern now. She wouldn't bring it up. Not unless she had to. Because if she kept things surface level, polite, distant, she could avoid confrontation a little longer. She didn't realize I had no intention of giving her that confrontation. Over the next week, I kept everything steady. No accusations. No changes in routine. But behind the scenes, I was methodically separating our lives. I started waking up earlier, going on solo runs through the neighborhood, letting the cold morning air bite into me until I could breathe again. I changed the locks on my personal files, moved photos to an external drive, met with a lawyer under the guise of grabbing drinks with coworkers. It all felt like something I should be sad about, but I wasn't. Not really. Not yet. I was too focused. There was power in not reacting. There was peace in the distance I was creating. And there was clarity in every move I made. One evening, I left my phone unlocked on the counter, baiting the trap. A photo album was open, old photos of us. Beach trips, birthdays, that cabin trip in Vermont. Sarah walked by, glanced at the screen, and paused. "Feeling nostalgic?" she asked, her voice light. I shrugged. "Just backing things up." She froze for a moment, but quickly masked it. "That's probably smart. Our iCloud's always full." I nodded, sipping my drink. "I'm thinking about getting my own storage plan, separate from the shared one." That hit her. Her eyes flicked to mine, quick as a spark. But I kept my face neutral, gave her no reason to respond. She didn't push. She just walked away. Later that night, I stood in the bathroom doorway and watched her get ready for bed. She moved like nothing was wrong. Same routine, same rhythm, but it looked robotic now, like she was playing the part of someone she hadn't been in months. When she turned off the lights and slid into bed, I didn't follow. I went back downstairs and sat on the couch in the dark. The silence was no longer empty. It was mine. The next day, I called my lawyer again and scheduled the paperwork. It wasn't hard. I had **TS, timestamps, photos. My lawyer said it was clear-cut. Infidelity cases don't always swing things dramatically, but they help. Especially when the offending spouse has no idea what's coming. He asked if I wanted to confront her first. "No," I said. "Not yet. I want the papers ready first." "Good move," he said. "Control the narrative. You're in the driver's seat now." That phrase stuck with me. Driver's seat. For months, I'd felt like a passenger in my own life. Watching Sarah change lanes, watching her veer off course, all while pretending she was still heading in the same direction. Now I had my hands back on the wheel. I came home that night and found her on the couch, scrolling through her phone. She looked up and smiled like everything was fine. "How was your day?" she asked. "Productive," I said. "Good." She smiled, looked relieved, as if my calm meant we were okay, as if quiet meant forgiveness, as if silence meant ignorance. I sat down across from her, opened a book, and let the silence stretch between us like a wall she didn't even know had been built. That weekend, I stayed out late for once. Told her I was grabbing drinks with an old friend, no names, no details. She nodded a little too casually. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe she was relieved to have the house to herself. Either way, I didn't care. I walked through the city for hours. No destination. No plan. Just the rhythm of my shoes on pavement and the steady hum of possibility returning to my life. I wasn't spiraling anymore. I wasn't questioning my worth. I wasn't begging for answers from someone who had already decided I didn't deserve them. I was preparing. And when the time came, I wouldn't shout. I wouldn't cry. I would just place the truth in front of her, calmly, clearly. And then I'd walk away, not as the man she betrayed, but as the man she underestimated. I didn't wake up one morning feeling brand new. There was no sudden rush of empowerment or blazing fire of revenge. Came slowly, like waking from a long sleep. At first, just a few small flickers of self returning. Then more. It started the morning I made eggs the way I like them. It sounds ridiculous, I know, but I'd been scrambling them for years. Soft, barely seasoned, just how Sarah preferred. She always wrinkled her nose when I added hot sauce or cooked them a little longer for those crispy edges I liked. So that morning, I cooked them until the whites blistered and bubbled, yolks thick like syrup. I drowned them in chipotle sauce, tossed them onto sourdough toast, and ate every bite standing by the window, watching the neighbors walk their dogs. For the first time in a long time, the silence in the house didn't feel cold. Felt like space. That's what betrayal leaves behind. Once the smoke clears. Not just pain, but space. A blank, open stretch where your life used to be. And if you don't fill it, someone else will. So I started filling it. The next night, I dug my guitar out of the hallway closet. It was buried behind a box of Halloween decorations and an unused yoga mat. The case was dusty. One of the strings had snapped, curled like a silver thread of regret. Sarah used to hate when I played. Said it made the apartment feel claustrophobic. She'd roll her eyes when I strummed through the intro to old Eagles songs or tried to remember the chords to something from college. Back then, I stopped because it didn't seem worth the friction. Now I rest-rung it, tuned it, and played until my fingers ached and the music drowned out every trace of her voice in my memory. That weekend, I rearranged the living room, moved the couch off the wall, flipped the rug, swapped the lamp to the opposite corner. Nothing fancy, just different. Mine. She noticed right away, of course. Came downstairs that Sunday morning, rubbing sleep from her eyes, staring at the shifted space. "Huh," she said, blinking. "This looks different." "Yeah," I said, sipping my coffee. Felt like a change. She stood there a second too long.